So a few years ago, I started a project called Passenger Seat, where I started taking photographs out of the passenger seat of a car as my partner drove from location to location. I'm honestly not very good at sitting still, so it kind of gave me something to do as we were doing these 8-hour road trips. But I really quickly fell in love with it. There's just something about it, kind of that happy accident that happens when you're in a moving vehicle and you slow your shutter speed down and you pan with whatever comes by the window, and some of that image is in focus and the rest of it creates this very kind of magical painterly image that, you know, I wouldn't get if I was just standing still with my camera just held nice and tight following all the rules. So I'd love to give you some tips and tricks on how to create these kind of images. So we've got a car and a driver, and I hope you'll come along. Get on in to the wrong side of the car. So what I'm looking for is probably something that's maybe 20 feet off the road, like a tree or something. So far away, if it's too far away, then I might get the tree in focus, but nothing else is going to blur significantly. I've slowed my shutter speed down. I've put it on shutter speed priority, and that way right now I'm trying like a 1/4 of a second. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get it to automatically lock focus on something, so a tree, a rock, grass, whatever, and then pan at the same speed. So I'm panning backwards while the car is going forward. And what that means is that anything that's in focus, should stay in focus, but everything in the foreground will actually be going in one direction, everything in the background will be going in another direction, and you should get this nice kind of movement in the image itself. It's a little odd to me because I'm sitting on the opposite side of the car. Typically, in the United States, I'm on that side of the car, so I've learned to look with one eye and shoot with the other eye. So that helps me just see things coming down the road, and then once I see something and I want to shoot it, I'll try tracking it with the other eye. As a photographer, I think we know that there's just a lot of in-between time. You're waiting for something, you're waiting for a bird, you're waiting for the light, you're waiting to get to a location. And so if you can be creative and just try something different, then it might get you to think in a different way and maybe, ignite a little spark of something else that you can do. But what I noticed is it's actually made me a better photographer because it's enabled me to track things better. It's enabled me to shoot with both eyes, one eye at a time, and anticipate things. And it also just, I just love the feeling that you get when you're in sync with what's going by you. And it kind of made me pay more attention to the landscape as well. And it's just a lot of fun. And it's something I think everyone should try. So traveling through the different territories in Australia, I've had a lot of different opportunities for a lot of different backdrops for this intentional camera movement. So I just want to take a look at a few of them. This one here is just me, moving the camera up and down. Love the effect, especially with that red rocks. To me, this is much more moody, kind of gives a nice little impressionistic view, something that you might not get with just a straight image. Again, this is taken at morning light. Again, just moving the camera while I'm standing still, we get this great motion. When the sun goes down, again, another great opportunity while you're just waiting for something to happen to include the camera blur. Another one at sunset. This is just moving the camera back and forth. We're on a boat, so just moving it left to right, looking down at the water and moving it left to right. Here again, beautiful morning, just in between times. The rock has got this beautiful glow on it, just moving the camera up and down a little bit. Then we went to this great stream. This is crossing the river here. And look at this, I just love the impressionistic view. Another version, just again, moving the camera. So I take a lot in order to get a few images that I really like. But I just love this with all the mangroves and the trees coming out of the water. To me, that's just gorgeous. Just a different kind of creative photography. Passing by a planned fire, so a burn. Here we've got a lot of different images with, you can see the fire. Then following another car on a dusty road, puts in all this dust in the air. So again, shooting out the car window in the dust, but with a higher shutter speed, so we don't get quite as much motion blur here. Then it gets a little darker, we get a little bit more blur. Passing through a river, we get these great blur on all of these trees and bushes. Now, I really like to have something sharp in the image if possible. So here we've got the boab tree sharp, really great when you can catch focus on one object in the middle of the image. But again, if they're blurred, that's absolutely fine. It's all creative and happy accidents. I do like all the colors and the warmth that you get in the evening, but I will go ahead and photograph these kind of images at any time when I just have a spare moment or want to do something a little creative, especially if I'm feeling a little bit in a rut. They'll help me kind of loosen up a little bit by breaking some of those rules. Okay, so while we were out there today, I just want to show you this image because it's showing you the kind of blur that you can get. If you lock focus, in this case it's just on the dirt, but it's a clear example that shows you how the motion that's in front of you, that's closer to you, is going to go in one direction, and the motion behind the object that you lock focus on will go into the other direction. So here's this great tree that we passed by, some smaller bushes, another tree. It's really interesting how you see the tree coming and then it changes shape as you pass it by. But I love just isolating these against a nice background, either a blue sky or maybe if there's a hill or something beyond it. So let's go ahead and make a few changes to this image. I want to start in the develop module. I'm going to use the crop tool just to straighten that horizon a little bit. And I might just trim it down from the top and just reposition it a bit to the right. Then I'm going to bring up my white point a little bit just to brighten up the entire image. I'll also brighten up the shadows just so that we can see into the trunk of this bush a little bit more. I'll add a little bit of dehaze. That's going to add a little bit more darkening down to that trunk, but it's also going to give that nice pop of saturation. I'll add a little bit of texture to this grass area that's in the foreground so that it also looks a little sharper and maybe even a little bit of clarity overall. All right, let's move to masking. I'm going to grab the radial gradient, hold down the command key and double click. That gives me a gradient that's the same size as the image. I'm going to darken down the exposure, but of course that darkens down the inside by default. So I'll click invert. So now we've got a darkening on the outside. I also want to just reposition it a little bit over to the left. That's why I use the radial gradient instead of the post-crop vignette, because I can go ahead and resize and reposition this and rotate it within the image depending on the placement of the subject. Now, when I did decrease the exposure, I think the blues got a little bit too blue, so I'm going to return to my edit stack, scroll down to HSL, and with the saturation selected, I'll grab the targeted adjustment tool and just drag down a bit. Oh, and look at that. What is that in the sky? I'm now noticing there are some dust spots, so I'll tap Q. That gives me my healing tool. Let's go ahead and just zoom in there. Let's zoom into 100%, and I'm going to remove these 3 dust spots that are pretty evident. I mean, I can really see those. But if I zoom out, if I turn on visualize spots, that's going to help me to see any other dust spots that I might have missed. So now I can zoom in again here. We see there's a dust spot right here, so I'll remove that one. Scroll over, I believe there was one over here, and go ahead and click. All right, let's zoom back out. Turn off visualize spots. Now I'm confident that all of the dust spots are gone in my image, and we can see a quick before and after. So as you can see, sometimes breaking the rules can be a really good thing for our creativity, and using Lightroom in order to enhance our images can help us to tell the story that we want to tell.